The building is ablaze, flames curling out of shattered windows, smoke thick enough to blind. A firefighter sprints through the chaos, past sirens and screams, straight into the burning structure. Later, in the calm aftermath, someone asks him, "Why did you go in?" He pauses, shakes his head slowly, and replies, "I just knew I had to." But here's the remarkable part. Long before he made the decision to move, before he even consciously registered the danger, his heart had already spiked. His pulse surged, vessels constricted, and blood began rushing to his muscles. His body, it seems, knew something before his mind did. This moment, so often repeated in crisis and instinct, reveals a profound question at the heart of human experience. Why does the heart react before we consciously understand what's happening? Is it merely responding to signals from the brain, like a loyal servant following orders? Or is it something more, a sensory organ in its own right, detecting and interpreting the world on its own terms? For centuries, we've believed the brain sits atop the hierarchy of the body, an all-powerful command center that receives input and directs output, making decisions, storing memories, feeling emotions. The heart, by contrast, was seen as little more than a mechanical pump, a background beat keeping time for the brain's orchestra. But that view is changing. New research in neurocardiology suggests that the relationship between heart and brain is not a one-way street. In fact, it may not be hierarchical at all. The heart has its own intricate network of 40,000 neurons, so many that scientists now call it the heart-brain. And remarkably, the heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. It communicates through electrical impulses, pressure waves, hormones, and even electromagnetic fields, shaping our emotions, decisions, and awareness in ways we're only beginning to understand. Could it be that the heart is not just responding, but sensing, not just obeying, but guiding? In moments of instinct, when we leap out of the way of a speeding car, or feel unease before a word is spoken, or run into fire before the mind has time to think, perhaps it is the heart, not the brain, that makes the first move. Perhaps it is the heart that feels, predicts, prepares, a sensory brain beneath the ribs, an organ of intuition as much as blood. And if that's true, then every beat carries more than life. It carries perception. It feels the world before thought ever begins. Long before the age of machines and microscopes, the heart was understood, not just as a life-sustaining pump, but as the center of human experience. To the ancient Egyptians, it was the most sacred organs, sacred, in fact, that it was weighed in the afterlife to determine a person's worth, while the brain was discarded as unimportant. In Greek philosophy, Aristotle believed the heart was the seat of thought, sensation, and emotion, pulsing with knowledge and direction. Across cultures and civilizations, the heart was revered as the compass of the soul, the source of intuition, courage, grief, and love. But this view began to shift dramatically during the Enlightenment. As science turned its gaze inward with increasing precision, the brain emerged as the master organ. René Descartes famously declared, "Cogito, ergo sum," I think, therefore I am, and in doing so, crowned conscious thought as the defining feature of human identity. Emotion was downgraded, seen less as a source of wisdom and more as noise and interference in the rational machinery of the mind. The heart, once poetic and powerful, became mechanical, a metronome for the brain's symphony, important only insofar as it delivered oxygen to more important places. For centuries, this view dominated medicine, psychology, and culture. The heart was stripped of mystery and assigned a single function, to pump. But near the end of the 20th century, something strange began to emerge in the research. A handful of scientists exploring the autonomic nervous system made an astonishing discovery. The heart contains a network of about 40,000 neurons, specialized nerve cells that form an intricate internal nervous system. This little brain within the heart doesn't just respond to commands from the head. It can learn, remember, and make decisions independently of the cerebral brain. It communicates with the brain via the vagus nerve, and its signals can influence perception, emotional regulation, and even cognitive function. In other words, the heart isn't just listening, it's talking, and sometimes it's leading. This modern revival of the heart's role comes with profound implications. In high-stakes moments like grief, danger, or deep connection physiological, data shows that the heart often reacts before the brain consciously processes what's happening. Soldiers report feeling a split-second knowing before entering dangerous terrain. Parents have described sensing something was wrong with their child moments before receiving a call. Lovers can feel each other's emotional state before a word is spoken. In each of these cases, the heart is not simply responding to adrenaline or stress, it's participating in perception. It's tuning the body before thought arrives. Today, we're just beginning to understand the cost of ignoring this reality. In trauma, the heart's rhythms become chaotic, disrupted by fear, grief, and loss in ways that echo through the body. In medicine, treating emotional suffering as a purely cerebral issue often overlooks the body's deeper wisdom. In therapy, failing to address the heart's role in intuition and emotional memory may leave some forms of healing out of reach. The stakes are high. Misunderstanding the heart's role in how we feel, decide, and survive doesn't just limit our knowledge, it limits our humanity. Because in the rhythm of each heartbeat, there may be more than blood. There may be guidance. There may be memory. There may be a quiet, ancient intelligence we've only just begun to hear again. In a dimly lit laboratory, volunteers sat hooked to monitors' heart rate sensors, skin conductance meters, and IG caps measuring brain waves. Their task was simple: watch a screen. One by one, images flashed before them. Some were mundane: a chair, a tree, a neutral face. Others were deeply disturbing: violent scenes, graphic accidents, emotionally jarring content. What made the experiment unique was the timing. The images were selected randomly by a computer and shown after randomized delays, so no pattern could be predicted, no conscious anticipation formed. And yet, something strange began to emerge. Long before the image appeared, sometimes several seconds before the participants' bodies reacted, their heart rates spiked. Their skin showed signs of increased conductivity, a classic signal of emotional arousal. These physiological changes happened before the brain consciously registered anything on the screen. There was no obvious stimulus, no sound, no visual clue. And yet, the body, specifically the heart, seemed to know what was coming. At first, the researchers were cautious. Perhaps it was a statistical glitch. Perhaps the body was simply reacting to internal rhythms or subconscious patterns in how the brain anticipated sequences. But the results were replicated again and again across multiple experiments and independent labs. The data showed the same strange effect. The heart was reacting before the event. This sparked a quiet revolution and an intense dilemma. Could it be that the heart is more than a pump, more even than a little brain? Could it be a sensory organ that perceives time differently? One that detects subtle, unconscious cues beyond vision, beyond logic, before the cerebral brain has time to interpret them? If so, what does that mean for how we understand perception itself? Is our concept of time and awareness too narrow, too brain-centered? Mainstream science pushed back. Many neurologists insisted it was correlation, not causation, that perhaps the subjects were unconsciously detecting microsignals or responding to an internal rhythm that coincidentally aligned with image presentation. Skeptics argued that until a precise mechanism could be mapped, until there was a clearly identifiable path of cause and effect, such findings could not rewrite the rules of perception. But the evidence kept growing. Peer-reviewed studies, physiological modeling, and meta-analyses confirmed that these anticipatory responses, especially in the cardiovascular system, weren't artifacts. Something was happening in the body, especially in the heart, that standard models of cognition could not explain. And so the dilemma deepened. If the heart is perceiving in ways the brain cannot, what else is it sensing? Could it be attuned to patterns of danger, emotional energy, even interpersonal resonance? Could it be an unconscious warning system developed through millennia of evolution that operates beneath our awareness to protect and prepare us? We don't yet have all the answers, but we do have a new question, one that may redefine our understanding of intuition, perception, and even consciousness itself. What if the body, led by the heart, knows things before we do? In a dimly lit laboratory, volunteers sat hooked to monitors, heart rate sensors, skin conductance meters, and IG caps measuring brain waves. Their task was simple: watch a screen. One by one, images flashed before them. Some were mundane: a chair, a tree, a neutral face. Others were deeply disturbing, violent scenes, graphic accidents, emotionally jarring content. What made the experiment unique was the timing. The images were selected randomly by a computer and shown after randomized delays, so no pattern could be predicted, no conscious anticipation formed. And yet, something strange began to emerge. Long before the image appeared, sometimes several seconds before the participants' bodies reacted, their heart rates spiked. Their skin showed signs of increased conductivity, a classic signal of emotional arousal. These physiological changes happened before the brain consciously registered anything on the screen. There was no obvious stimulus, no sound, no visual clue, and yet, the body specifically, the heart, seemed to know what was coming at first. The researchers were cautious. Perhaps it was a statistical glitch. Perhaps the body was simply reacting to internal rhythms or subconscious patterns in how the brain anticipated sequences. But the results were replicated again and again across multiple experiments and independent labs. The data showed the same strange effect. The heart was reacting before the event. This sparked a quiet revolution and an intense dilemma. Could it be that the heart is more than a pump, more even than a little brain? Could it be a sensory organ that perceives time differently, one that detects subtle, unconscious cues beyond vision, beyond logic, before the cerebral brain has time to interpret them? If so, what does that mean for how we understand perception itself? Is our concept of time and awareness too narrow, too brain-centered? Mainstream science pushed back. Many neurologists insisted it was correlation, not causation, that perhaps the subjects were unconsciously detecting microsignals or responding to an internal rhythm that coincidentally aligned with image presentation. Skeptics argued that until a precise mechanism could be mapped, until there was a clearly identifiable path of cause and effect, such findings could not rewrite the rules of perception. But the evidence kept growing. Peer-reviewed studies, physiological modeling, and meta-analyses confirmed that these anticipatory responses, especially in the cardiovascular system, weren't artifacts. Something was happening in the body, especially in the heart, that standard models of cognition could not explain. And so the dilemma deepened. If the heart is perceiving in ways the brain cannot, what else is it sensing? Could it be attuned to patterns of danger, emotional energy, even interpersonal resonance? Could it be an unconscious warning system developed through millennia of evolution that operates beneath our awareness to protect and prepare us? We don't yet have all the answers, but we do have a new question, one that may redefine our understanding of intuition, perception, and even consciousness itself. What if the body, led by the heart, knows things before we do? In recent decades, the emerging field of neurocardiology has reshaped our understanding of how the body communicates with itself and, perhaps, how we experience the world. At the center of this shift is the discovery that the heart is not a passive responder to the brain, but an active participant in our cognitive and emotional lives. The heart communicates with the brain through three primary pathways: the vagus nerve, hormonal signaling, and its own powerful electromagnetic field. These signals don't just regulate heart rhythm, they influence emotion regulation, attention span, stress responses, and even how memories are consolidated in the brain. The implications are profound. If the heart is constantly sending signals upward, informing the brain about the body's internal state, emotional safety, and even social resonance, then the long-standing idea that the brain is the sole command center no longer holds. In fact, research shows that the heart sends more neural traffic to the brain than the brain sends back. And so, an unsettling question rises: who's really in charge? This isn't just theoretical. In trauma studies, a haunting phrase often recurs among survivors: "My heart knew before I did." Victims of abuse, violence, or sudden loss frequently describe a visceral knowing that arrived before logic, before words, a quickening pulse, a tightening in the chest, a shift in breath, signals the brain could not yet interpret, but that the body already understood. It is as though the heart stores a kind of pre-verbal intelligency, language of safety and danger, rooted in rhythm and felt experience rather than thought. Strikingly, ancient traditions seem to have known this intuitively. Practices like meditation, breathwork, and prayer often involve tuning into the heart's rhythm. Regulating breath affects vagal tone, which in turn modulates heart rate variability, a known marker of emotional resilience and mental clarity. What modern science is beginning to prove, spiritual traditions have long practiced. When we slow the breath and quiet the mind, the heart becomes a compass. Calm and coherence return. Insight deepens. Yet in today's tech-driven culture, we are trained to override this inner knowing. We valorize logic, speed, and productivity. Children are taught to think before they act, to suppress instinct in favor of calculation. Intuition is often framed as inferior to rational thought, a guess, a gamble, a ghost of a feeling rather than a source of wisdom. But biology tells a different story. The heart often reacts first. It processes threat, empathy, beauty, and trust before the prefrontal cortex ever lights up. It is not irrationally, is pre-rational, and when we ignore this, the consequences are not just personal, but social. Across cultures, gut feelings, those fast, embodied signals, are often dismissed as irrational, emotional, or unreliable. This dismissal has disproportionately affected women, children, and marginalized groups. A woman who senses danger on a date is told she's overreacting. A child who feels anxious around a teacher is labeled difficult. A person who grieves with intensity is told to move on. When heart-driven instincts are devalued, we don't just lose touch with our own signals, we begin to doubt our inner compass. We silence the body's warnings, and in doing so, we lose access to one of the most ancient tools for survival and connection. The deeper we look into the dialogue between heart and brain, the more we realize this isn't a hierarchy, it's a partnership. And when one partner is ignored, when the heart's voice is drowned out by the brain's dominance, we don't become more rational, we become unbalanced. The path to wisdom may not lie in choosing between feeling and thinking, but in learning how to listen to both and to recognize that, often, the first voice we hear is not coming from the mind, but from the quiet pulse in our chest. The moment of clarity arrives, not with a scientific breakthrough alone, but with a quiet reordering of what we thought we knew. The heart is not just a pump, it is a sensor constantly taking in information from within and around us. It is a signal processor translating that information into patterns the brain interprets as emotion. safety, urgency, or calm. And perhaps most profoundly, it is a compass, a biological guide, pointing us toward connection, adaptation, and survival. But the real twist, the data point that transformed, scattered, discoveries into a new paradigms, something hidden in the rhythm itself. Heart rate variability, or HRV, once considered a minor byproduct of cardiac function, has emerged as a window into the body's deepest wisdom. HRV refers to the tiny fluctuations in time between each heartbeat. At first glance, these variations might seem like noise, but they are, in fact, the signal. Studies now show that HRV is one of the most reliable predictors of emotional regulation, resilience, and even empathy. People with high HRV can shift states more easily from stress to calm, from anger to compassion. They adapt faster, recover quicker, and show more attunement to the emotions of others. In contrast, low HRV is linked to anxiety, burnout, chronic stress, and even premature death in cardiac patients. It's not just a number, it's a reflection of how harmoniously the heart and brain are communicating. And here's the revelation. HRV is not static. It's not determined entirely by genetics or fate. It can be trained. Practices like deep, slow breathings, especially when paired with extended exhalations, stimulate the vagus nerve and increase HRV. Gentle touch, especially from someone trusted, can calm the heart's rhythm and improve coherence. Listening to music that evokes emotional safety or awe can entrain heart and brain into sync. Even the act of feeling gratitude, something as simple as recalling a moment of kindness, has been shown to raise HRV and improve emotional flexibility. This turns the old model of emotional health on its head. We once believed that to master emotion, we had to control the mind, but the body, specifically the heart, holds another key. It doesn't just react to stress or love or fear. It interprets, integrates, and often initiates those states. The rhythms of the heart are not background noise. They are instructions. In that realization, something profound becomes clear. The heart doesn't merely feel, it leads. Today, the science is no longer speculative, is grounded, measurable, and expanding. The heart, once relegated to metaphor and mechanics, has emerged as a central player in emotion and cognition. Its rhythms are not just vital signs, they are emotional signatures. The signals it sends to the brain shape not only how we react to the world, but how we recover from it. The heart's influence extends to the deepest layers of our mental health, affecting resilience, focus, memory, and our capacity for connection. This understanding is revolutionizing therapy. Trauma specialists now use heart rate variability, HRV, biofeedback as a core tool for healing. Patients learn to regulate their breath, their posture, and their emotional focus, just to feel better in the moment, but to rewire the way their heart and brain communicate. When HRV improves, symptoms often decline, not only because the nervous system is more stable, but because the heart has begun to lead with coherence instead of chaos. Mindfulness practices, long viewed as spiritual or alternative, are now understood. In physiological terms, breath awareness, compassion meditations, and somatic grounding techniques all activate the vagus nerve, increasing HRV and restoring heart-brain synchronization. This isn't just relaxation, it's regulation. It's healing from the inside out, led by rhythm rather than reason. Even in high-stakes fields like emergency response, military training, and law enforcement, new programs are teaching professionals to tune into their heart signals. In moments of crisis, subtle cardiac shifts can offer early warning, cause danger sensed in a fraction of a second, long before conscious thought catches up. Intuition, once dismissed as unscientific, is increasingly understood as embodied, measurable, and life-saving. This growing body of work falls under a rising discipline, affective neuroscience. No longer confined to the brain, it views emotion as a body-wide system. The mind does not float above the body, it is embedded in it. Emotion is not just thought, tinged with feeling. It is physiology, chemistry, rhythm, breath, and pulse. The body doesn't merely respond to the brain's commands, it co-creates. Experience. And in the stories of healing, a pattern emerges. People recovering from trauma, grief, or anxiety often describe a pivotal moment in their journey. Not when they finally understood the cause of their pain, not when they could name it or analyze it, but when, unexpectedly, they felt their hearts settle, when the storm inside eased, and their breath found rhythm again. It wasn't logic that brought peace, it was coherence, a felt sense of wholeness, anchored not in explanation, but in the body. That's where healing begins, not in thinking differently, but in feeling differently, in letting the heart speak, in recognizing that it has been speaking all along. In the pale light of early morning, a mother cradles her child after a long and restless night. The baby stirs, whimpers, then settles into the warm curve of her chest. She doesn't say a word. She doesn't need to. Her body knows what to do. She draws a slow, deep breath, and instinctively, her heartbeat begins to slow. Moments later, the baby's tiny heart slows too, falling into rhythm with hers. No commands, no instructions, just synchronate two nervous systems humming together. In a silent conversation, older than language, there is no logic guiding this moment, no plan, no analysis. Her brain doesn't tell her how to soothe, her heart does. It leads without words, teaches without explanation, connects without effort. In that quiet stillness, we see something primal and true. Regulation, comfort, and healing begin not in the mind, but in the body specifically, in the rhythm of the heart. And perhaps that's the deeper truth we've been circling all along. Maybe the mind is not always the leader we imagine it to be. Maybe, more often than we realize, it follows guided by something deeper, older, more intuitive, a quiet internal music that pulses through our blood, steadies our breath, and shapes the emotional texture of our lives. We spend so much time trying to understand our feelings, to name them, organize them, explain them away. But the origin of emotion doesn't begin with a thought. It begins with a signal, a shift in heartbeat, a tightening in the chest, a surge of rhythm that precedes language. Before we form a thought, before we speak a word, the heart whispers. It senses, it knows. And so perhaps the role of the mind is not to control the heart, but to listen to it, to recognize its wisdom, to translate its rhythm into reflection, to follow its lead, because in the end, the brain may explain what we feel, but the heart knows it first.